Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. Alex's POV. Christian and I sat in silence, watching Derek stumble to his feet after crashing into one of the tables. The condiment bottles that had been neatly displayed now decorated the once pristine white tablecloth, and Derek's very questionable shirt. And I mean very questionable. Just when I thought things couldn't get stranger, the glass doors of the resort swung open. Joan stormed in with Brad right behind her, looking more confused than anyone else. Joan's expression was one I knew well. She was furious. Christian opened his mouth to say something, but Joan beat him to it. "What in the world is wrong with you?" she snapped, grabbing Derek by the ear and dragging him across the balcony despite his protests. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to try some of that bread. It's called the Royal Bloomer, made with champagne and actual gold. It was featured in Foodie Exclusive. When I heard the chef here could make it, I just had to." Christian cut him off. "What are you all doing here?" His voice carried across the space, quieting everyone. Joan looked like she wanted to answer, but she hesitated. Brad finally stepped forward. "It's a long story. John invited me on a last-minute vacation since he was happy about the launch results. At first, I wasn't going to come, but then I asked if I could bring someone along. He said yes, so I brought Joan. And well, Brad trailed off, stumbling over his words. Joan rolled her eyes and simplified things. "It's a romantic getaway. We're here as a couple." I raised an eyebrow, half amused and half surprised. They were in Hawaii on a couple's trip, and she hadn't called me the second she found out? Then again, I had just flown 10 hours, so maybe it slipped her mind. Brad's face turned crimson when Christian and I exchanged exaggerated eyebrow wiggles in his direction. It was obvious that Joan was constantly on his mind. And I couldn't blame him. Even with a few loose strands from wrangling Derek, Joan looked stunning. She wore a long tropical print sundress, her hair pinned up with a brooch I'd once given her as a joke. She had even pulled out false lashes for the occasion. "She looks amazing," I thought, catching Brad's sneaking glances at her every chance he got. Christian gave a slow nod. "That sounds like something John would do. But inviting Derek? That doesn't sound like him." Joan sighed. "Remember that hot dog eating contest Derek wouldn't stop talking about last year?" I leaned back, trying to recall. "I think he mentioned it?" "Mentioned it?" Derek gasped dramatically. "I downloaded 6 countdown apps. You even promised to name your first kid Derek if I won. And Joan," he turned to her, ears still pinched, "you said you'd name yours Hot Dog." Joan's glare could have set him on fire. "Hot Dog," she hissed. Okay, maybe I exaggerated. It might have been after a few too many drinks at Tully's, but the point is, I told you both about this. It was even in the company calendar." Joan and I exchanged a look. "You only added that last week," I reminded him, "and you listed it as your great-aunt's funeral." Derek shrugged. "Getting PTO approved at Ivanov Corp is harder than filing taxes. No offense, Mr. Ivanov, sir." Christian just raised his hands. "We're working on fixing that." Derek puffed up again. "So, imagine my disappointment when I got here and found out the chef had been booked for the evening. Is that even legal?" I turned to Christian, eyes wide. "You did that?" He gave me a sheepish grin. "I wanted the best for you." My heart gave a little leap, the kind that feels like a punch but in the sweetest way. Derek, however, ruined the moment. "That's adorable and all, and I'll be sure to attend the wedding, but I'm still hungry." "Are you even staying at this resort?" I asked. Derek scoffed. "This is a hot dog eating competition, not the Oscars. Of course I'm not staying here." We all turned to him in disbelief. "Then how did you get in?" Brad asked. "Through security?" Joan added. "You're asking the wrong questions," Derek replied with dramatic flair. "The real question is, have we ordered yet?" He slipped out of Joan's grasp, staggered toward Christian and me, and fell to his knees. "Please, I've saved all year for this one meal. Let me stay. Joan tried tugging him up. Derek, seriously, get off the floor. I love you, Joan, but I can't walk away from this. I won't let my dream of tasting Chef Antoine's foie gras slip away. Christian sighed and scooted closer to me to make room. Get up and take a seat. The way Derek looked at him, you'd think he'd just been proposed to. Honestly, I almost got jealous. Are you sure? I whispered to Christian. He shrugged. The surprises aren't over yet. That made my cheeks burn. Derek dragged a chair to the table faster than I'd ever seen him move. Christian handed him a menu, and we shared one ourselves. A moment later, footsteps approached. Joan and Brad leaned over Derek's shoulder to sneak a look at the menu. I just heard foie gras and wanted to confirm it's duck, Joan said, but Christian sighed again. Would you two like to join us? He asked. Brad and Joan smiled as if they'd conjured chairs from thin air. Well, if you insist, Brad replied. Christian's POV. Well, that was quite the night, I said to Alex as I started changing out of my clothes. He was in the bathroom brushing his teeth. I'm so sorry you got dragged into my crazy friends, Alex replied after rinsing his mouth. And I'm really sorry if it ruined our evening. I had no idea any of them were here, especially Derek. That completely blindsided me. He came out of the bathroom in just his briefs, and I couldn't resist pulling him closer to my side of the bed. It's fine, I assured him gently. I still have plenty planned for just the two of us. He stood between my legs, putting me at eye level with his torso. My hands moved across his back, massaging from his shoulders down to his sides, and he leaned into me with a relaxed sigh. Do you like my food, baby? He teased, patting his full stomach. He had eaten so much at dinner that it made me happy. Even with all the interruptions, the night had still been a success, memorable even. My accountant might have fainted at the bill, but it was worth it. To my surprise, Derek had kept his word. He really had saved up just for that meal, and even paid for his portion despite my insistence that it wasn't necessary. It's about the principle, he told me, which, coming from Derek, almost made sense. I smiled at the memory. It's beautiful, I whispered, pressing a light kiss against Alex's stomach. You didn't have to go to such lengths, Alex murmured softly. But thank you. That caviar has made me rethink everything. My beliefs, my existence, even why they canceled Firefly. I had no idea what that reference meant, but I laughed anyway as we moved to lie down. His freshly washed skin was softer than usual, scented faintly of lavender from the body wash. I missed his usual rose fragrance, but the new scent fit perfectly with the sense of escape we had on this vacation. As soon as Alex settled on the mattress, he curled against me, tucking himself into my chest. I thought he was already drifting off when I felt his lips move. What was that? I asked. He pulled his face away just enough for me to hear. Do you think Derek's going to win the hot dog competition tomorrow? I paused, then chuckled. If there's one thing Derek is truly skilled at, it's eating. I think he's got a real shot. Alex shook with laughter. You're right. He's got this in the bag. Within minutes, he was sound asleep. It didn't take long before I joined him, slipping into a food coma of my own. My inner alarm clock woke me at sunrise. Light streamed through the balcony doors as I carefully untangled myself from Alex's grip. He had clung to me like a stuffed animal all night, heavenly, though a little suffocating at times. I pressed a soft kiss to his forehead and nose before quietly getting ready for the day. Brad had messaged that he was already in the business center, handling some work. I promised to join him soon but needed coffee first. At the resort restaurant, a hostess greeted me warmly. Could I get 2 coffees to go? 2 sugars and 1 cream each? I asked. Of course, sir, she said with a smile. Please wait at the bar or lounge while I prepare them. I nodded, but as I moved toward the bar stools, I froze. A familiar laugh carried from behind the fireplace in the center of the restaurant. Peering around, I spotted John at a booth by the windows, and sitting across from him was Derek. Derek? I asked in disbelief as I approached. Both of them looked up. Christian. John grinned. Good morning. How was your night? Derek also chimed in with a cheerful greeting. I glanced at my watch. 7 in the morning. No wonder I was baffled. These two looked more energized than most people after 3 espressos. Good morning. Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, do you two know each other? John chuckled. Not until now. I came down early for breakfast and happened to run into Derek. He wasn't lying. Back in college, John was always the first one awake, cooking for the rest of us after long nights. After Chef Antoine's meal, I went to bed full, which always makes me wake up hungry, Derek added with a grin. Same here, John agreed. Then he turned to me. Remember I said this trip was partly business, partly pleasure? Well, the pleasure is actually this annual hot dog eating competition. It's a big deal here on the island. And can you believe I ran into one of the contestants? Incredible, right? Before I could find a polite response, the waitress returned with my order. Here are your coffees, sir, she said, handing me the to-go cups. Thank you. I gave her a smile, then turned back to John and Derek. Well, enjoy your breakfast. I'll see you both at the competition later. Words I never thought I'd hear myself say. See you then. John called as I made my exit, shaking my head. This was shaping up to be a very unusual morning. When I reached the business center, Brad was seated in the same quiet corner John had used yesterday. He looked up and smiled. Good morning. Morning, I replied, setting a coffee in front of him. You know I prefer tea, Christian, Brad teased. Drink your coffee, Brad, I said firmly, taking a seat across from him. We need to talk. Christian's POV. I could write an entire monologue on why tea is better than coffee, Brad muttered. No one wants to hear it, I replied, shaking my head. We were seated across from one another in the business center, a stack of documents spread between us. Brad had been staring at his untouched coffee for 10 minutes straight. He sighed again. I would have taken water. You're impossible, I said with a small laugh. Most of the paperwork in front of me was just Brad's endless planning, projects and to-do lists he couldn't help but bring, even on what was supposed to be a relaxing trip. Sorry for interrupting your dinner last night, he said eventually. Joan and I ran into Derek on the way in. Somehow, he knew who had reserved Chef Antoine's time and was already halfway to you before we could stop him. That explained why they burst in just moments after Derek. What I still didn't understand was why Derek had been climbing up the terrace. I was going to text you that we landed, Brad continued, stumbling over his words, but I wanted some time alone with Joan. In Hawaii. He sounded like a shy teenager. I couldn't help but find it oddly endearing. So, I guess neither of our romantic evenings went as planned, I said with a grin. He gave me a small nod. Were you and Joan planning on moving things forward on this trip? Brad nearly choked. On what? I couldn't tell you. Definitely not the coffee. Oh my goodness, Christian, no. We basically just started seeing each other. I raised an eyebrow over the papers. Brad, this is rich, coming from the same guy I've seen fall head over heels within 5 minutes of meeting someone. He gasped in protest. I'm not that man anymore and you know it. I laughed. It was true, Brad had changed a lot. Once, he had been like confetti, scattered everywhere. Now he was, well, more grounded. At least tell me you've kissed her? His silence gave me my answer. Setting the papers aside, I leaned forward. Brad, look at me. Please tell me you've at least kissed this poor woman. He fumbled. You can't rush these things. How long did it take you and Alex to kiss? That caught me for a moment. He was my assistant, Brad. I had to keep it professional. Plus, I didn't even know if he liked me, let alone what his orientation was. Brad took his first sip of coffee, clearly trying to stall. I have a 6-month plan. I groaned. If you don't kiss her tonight, I swear I'll bring up Mr. Twiggs. His body stilled, eyes darting to mine. You wouldn't. I would, I said with a grin. And I will. As soon as we get back, I'll pay Miss Anderson a visit and let her know who really killed her beloved parrot 15 years ago. That's not fair, Christian, Brad whispered fiercely. She was my favorite teacher. And it was an accident. Mr. Twiggs didn't deserve that ending, I replied, smirking. I still visit her out of guilt, he shot back. And every day you live a lie, I teased. Brad slumped, finally admitting, I just don't know how to move forward with Joan. I feel like I say all the wrong things around her. It's embarrassing. Brad, I said more gently, I say ridiculous things in front of Alex all the time. No one gets it right every time. Just be honest with her. Be yourself. Joan can spot insincerity a mile away. That made him laugh quietly, nodding. I'm glad you found someone who makes you flustered, I added. It was time. His cheeks turned red, but he didn't deny it. Keep it simple. Joan doesn't need grand gestures, she'll appreciate something heartfelt, I told him. Brad gave me a small smirk. You know, I think the same could be said about Alex. When I returned to our suite, I found Alex already up and getting ready. His sleep habits still amazed me. The man could nap anywhere, Good morning, I greeted with a grin. He was drying his hair with a towel, already dressed in a Hawaiian shirt and khaki shorts. This one was more subdued than yesterday's bold print, dare I say, actually nice. Morning. I got your text about meeting with Brad. Everything go okay? He asked. I picked up another towel to help dry the back of his head. His cheeks flushed, but he didn't stop me. Just tying up loose ends. Oh, and I ran into Derek and John together downstairs. Strange combination. Anything involving Derek is bound to be strange, Alex said with a chuckle. But thanks for going to the hot dog competition with me today. I know it's probably the last place you'd want to be. Not true, I thought. Anywhere with Alex was never the last place I wanted to be. Usually it was the first. I'm kind of excited, I lied lightly. I'm sure it'll be entertaining. Alex laughed. Don't worry. The second someone gets sick, we're leaving. That I could agree with. We grabbed breakfast together, though Alex kept it light, just a pancake and fruit, out of caution for the upcoming spectacle. I settled on oatmeal, trying to keep up my health routine despite vacation temptations. The competition started at 11, and John had arranged a driver for the group, Alex, Joan, Brad, and me. Derek, apparently, John would personally escort. This day was already taking odd turns. When we met Joan and Brad, I was surprised. Brad wore a light cotton shirt with a deep V-neck, something I never thought I'd see him in. It paired nicely with Joan's floral dress. Alex had convinced me to buy one of the resort's Hawaiian shirts so we could match. Looking around at everyone's outfits, I almost wished I had hired a photographer. We looked hilariously out of our element, but in the best way. Arriving at the site, I realized how wrong my assumptions had been. I expected a small tent and a couple of food stands. What we saw was nothing like that. Not at all. Alex's POV. The beach was absolutely packed. And I mean packed. A giant tent stood just a couple hundred feet from the shoreline, surrounded by a massive crowd. It looked like hundreds had gathered, swaying to the live band playing on stage. From a distance, it seemed as if everyone was dressed alike, but we weren't close enough yet to see the design. Is this the right place? Christian whispered as we edged forward. That's when we noticed it. The crowd was decked out in bright yellow t-shirts with a giant hot dog printed on the front, the words Annual Hot Dog Eating Contest plastered across them. A few even wore matching hot dog hats. I'd say so, I whispered back. We all stared in awe. With so many people, I wasn't sure we'd even get close enough to cheer for Derek. This is, wow, Joan said when she and Brad caught up to us. I didn't think it would be this big of a deal, Brad admitted. Should we grab some of those shirts too? I think that sounds fun, I said. Christian and Joan gave us the kind of look you'd give someone suggesting a terrible idea. Do you know how long it took me to find this dress? Joan gestured to her floral print. I'm not covering it with a hot dog shirt. I'm with Joan, Christian agreed. No way am I putting one of those on. Brad and I exchanged a look but let it go. The line at the merchandise tent was already too long anyway. Still, I was a little disappointed. As silly as they were, the shirts would have been a fun souvenir. We didn't have long to dwell on it. A host stepped onto the stage. Welcome to the 9th annual hot dog eating competition. Thank you all for joining us this year and supporting our performers. Now, let's get this competition started. The crowd erupted in cheers. I stood on tiptoe to catch a glimpse of the contestants lining up at a long table piled with hot dogs. My eyes landed on Derek, second from the left. He'd slicked his hair back for the occasion and was wearing his so-called lucky shirt, the same one he swore brought him vending machine miracles. The grin on his face stretched from ear to ear. The host explained the rules. Each of our 6 contestants has 10 minutes to eat as many hot dogs as possible. The champion will take home a $5,000 prize. But if anyone gets sick, they're disqualified. And remember, once the time ends, contestants must keep everything down for 5 more minutes for their score to count. A huge timer lit up on stage. The blow horn sounded. The contest began. Brad, Joan, Christian, and I leaned forward with unexpected excitement as Derek immediately went to work. And I mean work. He inhaled hot dogs like there was no tomorrow, barely stopping to breathe. The piles in front of him shrank faster than I thought possible. Derek is crushing it, Christian shouted, his excitement making me laugh. As the timer ticked down, 2 contestants dropped out. One had eaten 23, another 20. Derek kept powering forward, matching pace with a determined young woman on the far end. One by one, more contestants bowed out at 26, then 30. That left Derek and the woman both locked in. With a minute left, they were neck and neck at 42 hot dogs each. Christian grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight as the last seconds flashed by. Both Derek and his rival managed to shove down their 43rd hot dog as the horn sounded. The host's voice rang out. Unbelievable! But it's not over. 5 minutes on the clock to see who can hold out. The new timer started. The tension was almost unbearable. Derek puffed his cheeks, breathing heavily. His competitor tried stretching, grimacing between bites of air. Both looked seconds from losing it. I thought they might both make it, until, just before the horn blew, the woman suddenly buckled and rushed for the trash bin. The crowd erupted, half cheering, half groaning. Christian quickly whispered, "Is that our cue to look away?" I nodded fiercely, and we started making our way out with Joan and Brad. That was way more fun than I expected. Joan laughed once we were free of the crowd. I didn't think Derek was that good, but wow, Brad added. From the corner of my eye, I spotted someone waving. "Is that John?" I asked, pointing at a man in a Hawaiian shirt and bucket hat. "Yeah, that's him," Christian said. "Let's head over." John stood behind the tent, drink in hand. As we approached, Derek joined him. "Derek!" Joan cried, rushing into a hug. "You were amazing," she said, beaming. Derek's face flushed bright red. "Oh, stop," he said modestly. "I just did what anyone who was me would do." We all laughed at that. "Well, I'm proud of you," I told him. "And now you're $5,000 richer, you can finally put it toward those old student loans." Derek groaned. "You always have to ruin the moment," he teased, though he was still grinning. "John and I are going to meet the other contestants before I head out tonight." Joan and Brad exchanged a glance. We were thinking of strolling through the markets and grabbing dinner. "You two okay on your own?" Brad asked. "You 4 are the only reason Alex and I aren't already alone," Christian said quickly. Brad chuckled, patting him on the shoulder before he and Joan left. Derek and John waved, disappearing back behind the tent. That left just the 2 of us. "This just leaves me and you," I said with a smile. "The way it was supposed to be," Christian replied with a grin. "And this time, I've planned a date with no Derek, no Joan, no John, and no Brad." Christian's POV. Before I whisked Alex away to our final destination, I made a stop at the tent selling those incredibly tacky shirts. Personally, I thought they were an eyesore. But the way Alex's eyes lit up told me he really wanted one. The vendor swiped my card for $25 and some change, and the moment the shirt was handed over, Alex's grin stretched from ear to ear. He threw his arms around me in an abrupt, heartfelt hug. "Thank you," he gushed. "I'll pay you back when we get to the resort, I promise." "No, you won't," I teased, giving him a quick kiss on the forehead. "Just enjoy your silly shirt. Now, are you ready for our final stop?" Alex slipped his fingers through mine as we walked, and I couldn't help smiling. Brad's words from earlier replayed in my mind, about genuine gestures. Yes, Alex appreciated the fine dining and luxurious surprises, but I knew money could be a crutch. I wanted to give him something that felt more personal, more meaningful. So, I led him to a quieter part of the beach. Few people knew about this spot. As we drew closer, we saw a small group of women in traditional skirts and floral leis, each with a surfboard by her side. Alex slowed. "Who are they?" he asked. "They're hula dancers," I explained softly. "They're honoring the passing of one of the community's leaders, Kehaoe Kahekalani. It's a memorial ceremony. I know it sounds a little somber, but their songs are beautiful. I thought you might want to sit and watch with me." I pointed to a secluded spot I'd prepared earlier. Nestled near a natural rock barrier was a blanket spread across the sand, with candles flickering softly around it. On top sat a tray of small treats, 2 glasses, and a bottle of sparkling juice. Alex's head whipped toward me, eyes wide. For a moment I couldn't read his expression, until the biggest smile appeared, easing my nerves. "Do you like it?" I asked. "I love it," he said without hesitation. "This is beautiful, Christian, and so unlike you." I chuckled as we settled onto the blanket, leaning back against the rocks while the dancers entered the water. They formed a circle with their surfboards, waves lapping gently around them. Their skirts darkened with the tide as they began to sing, a melody that carried across the ocean breeze. Alex squeezed my hand, his gaze locked on them, completely absorbed. But I was more focused on him. The way his glasses had left a faint sunburn mark on his face, the way the sunset reflected in his eyes. Sharing this memory with him meant more than any lavish dinner ever could. As the ceremony continued, the dancers released hundreds of flowers onto the water, letting the current carry them out to sea. For a moment, Alex's eyes glistened, and I tightened my grip on his hand. The sun dipped lower, streaking the sky in golds and pinks. Alex nestled against me, his voice a quiet whisper. "That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen." "Would it be too cheesy?" I asked, smiling, "if I said you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen?" His face flushed red instantly. I mean, I laughed softly at his flustered reaction, then let the moment settle into peaceful silence as we watched the horizon fade into color. After a long pause, I whispered, "Thank you." He turned his head, confused. "For what?" "For everything. For being here. For being I shook my head with a small laugh. "I don't think I say it enough." Alex studied me with a gentle smile, waiting for me to continue. "These last few months have been life-changing," I admitted. "You came crashing into my world and completely turned it upside down. In the best way." His lips curved into a faint smile. "You started it when you smashed my laptop, remember?" I chuckled. "Oh, I remember." Then my voice softened. "Sometimes I worry I'll look in the mirror one day and not recognize myself because of how much I've changed. But now I realize, the real problem was all the years I thought I did recognize myself and didn't like who I saw." I exhaled. "You've made me value things I took for granted. My family, my work, and you." Alex's cheeks turned rosy, his lips parting slightly as if to respond, but I pressed on. "I spent this whole trip trying to find ways to show you how much you mean to me. I even rented an entire chef, but look how that turned out." I grinned faintly at the memory of Derek's dramatic entrance. Then, with sincerity, I added, "You've taught me that love isn't something you can buy. And I've never been with anyone who reminded me of that, until you." Alex gave my hand a firm squeeze. His eyes shone, though he stayed quiet. "I've never met anyone who makes me feel so unguarded," I whispered. "Anyone who makes me want to give so much of myself away. I know my life isn't easy. I know being with me means you'll face attention, sometimes good and sometimes bad. But I promise I'll do everything I can to make it easier for you." I hesitated, gathering my thoughts. This is new territory for me. But it's territory I want to explore with you. Because even though I've never felt this way before, I know one thing with absolute certainty. I looked into his hazel eyes, glowing in the last rays of sunset. "I'm pretty sure I've fallen completely in love with you, Alex Hamilton." Alex's POV. I didn't know what to say at first. Mostly because I was too busy trying to keep my tears from spilling. Christian's hand clutched mine so tightly, I wondered if my fingers would ever regain circulation. My chest ached, not from pain, but from the weight of his words. "Christian," I whispered, my voice trailing off. Words were so hard to find tonight. "I'm sorry," he rushed out. The look on his face shifted quickly into worry, mixed with something that almost resembled fear of rejection. It made my heart sink. I shouldn't have said it like that or rushed things. "Would you stop?" I interrupted firmly. Christian fell silent, eyes locked on me. "You make me wish I'd prepared a speech or something, because I don't think anything I say could possibly measure up to what you just told me." My voice shook, but I pressed on. "It's crazy to me that you're sitting here wondering if you've done enough, when in reality, you've done more for me than I'll ever be able to repay." I saw his tense shoulders ease as I continued. "You saved my mother's life, Christian. However complicated that relationship is, you still did it, for me. You stood up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself. You've given me the chance to breathe without constantly dreading the next phone call or confrontation. That's not nothing. That's everything." Christian stayed quiet, watching me with an intensity that made it both harder and easier to keep speaking. "The way you handled my drinking, the way you handled the gala." My throat tightened, eyes stinging with tears at the memory. That night was one of the hardest of my life. Seeing her there, seeing the way she embarrassed me again, it felt like every wall I built came crashing down. And yet, even though that, a small part of me was proud. Proud that she had to see the life I built without her help. Proud that you stood up for me when I couldn't. I let out a shaky breath. "You've also been honest with me. You've given me every detail about her care, every choice. You've reminded me that it's my decision when, or if I want a relationship with her again. You gave me back control." I glanced down at the sparkling juice between us, realizing he had chosen it in quiet recognition of my choice to step away from alcohol. He never pressed, never judged, he just noticed. "You've done more for me than words can explain," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I didn't think I'd ever learn anything about love or compassion from someone like you, but you've proven me wrong, in every possible way." For a moment, I couldn't meet his eyes. My emotions felt too raw, too exposed. I hated how easily I cracked open when it came to my mother, how vulnerable it made me feel. Christian's voice broke gently through my thoughts. "That can be so lonely." The truth of it hit me hard, and after a pause, I nodded. "You've made me realize it's okay to not always have it together," I whispered. "That it's okay to ask for help." Before I could retreat into my shell again, Christian pulled me forward, right into his arms. The embrace was warm, secure, and I let myself sink into it, resting my head against his shoulder. His hand rubbed slow, calming circles into my back. The other brushed against my neck, easing the tension in my shoulders. I closed my eyes, letting myself simply exist in that moment with him. After a long pause, I pulled back just enough to see his face. The golden sunset painted his eyes in brilliant light, and for a second, I forgot to breathe. To summarize my very long answer to your unspoken question, my voice dropped to a whisper, thick with emotion. "Christian Ivanov, I've fallen in love with you too." His expression shifted in an instant. Relief, wonder, joy, all flashing across his face at once. He didn't answer with words. Instead, his hands slid gently to the back of my head, threading through my hair as he guided me toward him. And then he kissed me. This kiss was different. Not hurried or careless, but deep, unshakable, full of passion and promise. The kind of kiss that anchored me completely in the moment, the kind that made me feel safe and wanted all at once. The world seemed to blur around us as we stayed like that, lips moving together slowly, as if time itself had stopped. When we finally broke apart, breathless, I leaned my forehead against his, smiling through the tears I hadn't been able to hold back anymore. "I meant it," I whispered. "I know," he whispered back. His smile was soft, almost reverent. For once in my life, I didn't feel the need to hide my emotions. For once, I let myself be seen completely. Bradford Ivanov's POV. Oh my goodness, that lobster frittata was incredible. I think it might have just changed my life. Joan said with a delighted sigh as we walked hand in hand down the garden trail from the restaurant. Her steps were light, almost a skip, her happiness radiating in every movement. It made me smile just watching her. I hadn't eaten nearly as much as she had, but that gave me more time to watch her expressions with each bite. Every dish brought out a new sparkle in her eyes, and every laugh at the table made me feel lighter than I had in years. She had even leaned over at one point, offering me a forkful of roasted potato. My cheeks warmed when our eyes met, but I accepted the bite all the same. Dinner had been filled with conversation, and that was Joan's gift. She could make any space feel open, inviting, and safe. I wasn't someone who usually spoke much. Most of the things I cared about weren't the kind of topics people found thrilling. But Joan, she listened. She asked questions. She cared. "So, if I'm following," she said as we walked, "the affidavit was dismissed because of too much hearsay and unreliable witnesses, but the jury couldn't reach a verdict because the prosecution couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And you said that responsibility is fully on the prosecution, right?" I stopped in my tracks, looking at her. "Why, that's right." Her grin widened. "I nailed that." She laughed. "You know, the law is way more complicated than Judge Judy ever made it seem." That made me laugh out loud, the sound surprising even me. Then she added, "I'd love to sit in on one of your cases someday." My head snapped toward her, startled. Part of me lit up at the thought, but another part wondered why someone like Joan would want to spend her time in a courtroom. "Are you sure?" I asked cautiously. "Most people find it dull. I wouldn't want to bore you." Christian's advice from earlier echoed in my head, about being genuine. And then, as if on cue, I remembered his very real threat about telling Miss Anderson the truth about poor Mr. Twiggs, her long-lost parrot. Maybe tonight really was the night I had to open up. I took a deep breath. "Compared to you, Joan, I sometimes feel like I have the personality of a rock," I admitted. "You light up every room. You know a little about everything, and you're fearless when it comes to speaking your mind. You'll debate about space, psychology, cults, conspiracy theories, you name it. You even still own a Furby." Her smile widened, encouraging me on. "You're passionate, and that's inspiring. Honestly, it's one of the most attractive things about you. Even when we disagree, I love it because I get to see that fire in you. And texting, I've always hated texting. But with you, even your silly emojis make me happy. That's not boring. That's the opposite." I hadn't realized how close I'd moved to her until then. My voice dropped softer. "You're phenomenal. I don't even know how you put up with someone as simple as me." Her smile faded into something more serious. "Brad, you could never bore me. Whoever made you think that you're dull was wrong. You're thoughtful. You're dedicated. And when you talk about something you care about, whether it's a case, a show, or even Star Wars, you light up in a way that makes me want to listen, even if I don't understand half of it. That's not boring. That's, honestly, very charming." My heart hammered in my chest as I looked at her. The golden light of the setting sun painted her skin in warm tones, her eyes steady on mine. "Joan," I whispered, glancing briefly at her lips. Would it be okay if I—" But I didn't get to finish. She rose on her toes and kissed me. For a moment, I froze, startled. But when I felt her begin to pull back, instinct took over. I drew her closer, deepening the kiss. My hands rested at her waist, anchoring her to me, while her floral scent surrounded me. It was sweet, warm, perfect. I didn't even realize I had learned her gently against the railing until my hand brushed against it. Her fingers threaded into my hair, and then the sound of my phone buzzing interrupted us. She pouted when I reluctantly pulled away, and I couldn't help laughing softly at the expression. My grin was so wide it almost hurt my cheeks. The alert was from a text. It was from Slav. I glanced down, scanning the words twice before they truly sank in. "Come home. Your mother and I need to talk to you and Christian. I wanted you to hear it from me first. We've dropped the charges against Vatic." Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.